This is what July 5th looks like. The day after July 4th. All day rosé. It's not good, but I got up bright and early, watched the first decisive day of the Tour de France. Before we get into that and before we actually start the podcast, we actually have a guest in the studio today. My good friend Todd DeBuff, president of Top Rank Boxing. Also an avid cyclist and Starva. He calls it Starva. Todd, thanks for being here, dude.
What a pleasure, man.
What do you think about Manny Pacquiao losing?
Listen, everyone says how controversial it is. I wasn't there.
You like that?
I do not like that. That's not true. Don't say that. I was not there. I watched it on ESPN, which was fantastic to be able to do it for here in the States. And most people that watched it here in the States had Manny winning big. The people live in Australia had it a real close fight. It's part of this, part of the way the game works.
Is there going to be a rematch?
We do have a rematch clause in there. I don't know if there's going to be a rematch. We do have a rematch clause.
Of course there's going to be a rematch.
Stop. We don't know. We don't know.
Look at that bag of money you're sitting on.
No, the truth be told is Manny is a senator, and that is his #1 priority right now. So, and
he's not aligned with this wingnut president they got.
Totally aligned with him.
He's out of his
totally aligned.
Mind.
He's totally aligned with him.
That's crazy.
But what do you want me to say? He's totally aligned with him. It's his political thinking.
Yeah. And what about Mayweather and this other and McGregor?
What about it?
How long is it going? 1 round? 2 rounds?
I don't know how many rounds it goes, but McGregor's got no chance.
We'll say anything on here. If I'm Floyd Mayweather, I take a fall. It's got to be rigged. He's got to lose.
I mean, that's like somebody saying lay down your bike in one of the stages of the
right.
tour. I mean, just for the drama, for the ratings. That is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard.
If they want to make money,
but
all they care about is money.
No,
he needs to take a dive.
Hold on a second. He always protects the O, Mayweather. Never wants to lose. Never, ever, ever wants to lose.
What's the O?
0.
Whatever he is.
He's 49-0. He always fights guys.
You know what else he wants? Is more zeros at the end of his bank account.
I know that too.
That's more important than the O. Let's start this podcast. Enough of boxing. Nobody wants to. What are they doing? Maybe
you'll never see your Facebook Live numbers just went through the roof.
They just went through the roof. Todd's gonna give me. Todd's a promoter. Get us on a. We should be on a big show doing this.
I'm in.
You know what? We don't want to be on a show. This is the show. This is the show. Thanks for tuning in.
There we go.
Got a couple emails yesterday. One of them was about my language. I'm going to try to clean that up today. I do understand that kids listen, and I try to, and my mom listens. And I'm going to clean it up today. I'm going to try.
Have you listened to your children's music? You're not the only one cussing.
Well, let's start the podcast. Wait, what stage did we just do?
5.
Stage 5. Because I always know until the rest day that, what stage. Let's start. Welcome back to the Stages podcast, stage 5. See, I know it's the 5th stage because the Tour de France started on July 1st. So even somebody as dumb as me knows until the first rest day, because that'll obviously move things by a day. I know that today is the 5th stage because it's July the 5th, and as I told our friends here on Facebook Live. You guys listening at home can't see this, but I actually had to start the podcast with my sunglasses on because the 5th is the day after the 4th. And if somebody sees that truck, that 18-wheeler full of rosé that ran me over yesterday, will you please call the police?
4th of July in Aspen's rough.
Yeah, but it's fun.
Parade started early.
Fun. Well, they moved the parade up to 11, and yesterday was so full of drama that we were busy recording that show, and we missed the first part. I missed my son riding his dirt bike in the parade. He's like, "Dad, did you see me?" And I said, I didn't. He's not too happy with me. But today didn't disappoint. I thought today was, although I missed the prediction again, and in fact, not only did I miss the prediction, but to me, Nairo Quintana's Tour de France is over. That's probably going out on a limb a bit, but he didn't look good. I think the message here for these riders in this current generation is the Giro Tour double isn't what it used to be.
It isn't physically possible.
Well, you don't want to say it's not. I mean, I'm sure there's somebody that could.
Yeah.
I mean, Chris Froome might be able to pull that off. But you saw all the riders who did the Giro. They're not sharp, and this, especially a finish like today, sharp is what you had to be, right? Mm-hmm. Short, steep, punchy. You had to be sharp, and they were just off.
The days of doing more than one Grand Tour are over. If you really want results in one, you've got to be peaking at that time. In theory, right?
Yeah, and it's just not to say that it's not possible, but these guys are so specialized now, right? And they focus, and of course, and I can speak from experience, the Tour is so much bigger than anything else that you really don't. There's no incentive to try, right? I mean, if you're Chris Froome and Team Sky, I mean, the global exposure in and around the Tour is 100 times anything else. So, from experience as an American and riding for an American team, that's all we care. People here in the United States, they don't know what the Tour of Italy is. Hell, a lot of them don't even know what the Tour de France is. So
right. So it's important for people to be peaked at that. And we saw some tired legs as we went up, as they had this massive finish. Like, it was like pitched to 20%, I think, at the end.
At the end, but that's, at the end, these guys at the end, they know it's the end, right? It's
Yeah.
and I gotta say, I was super impressed with Fabio Aru. His acceleration, sometimes these guys make these accelerations in the mountains, and not to call them TV attacks, but maybe they're just trying to size up the competition, soften up the competition. But when he went and kept going. It was.
And they didn't just let him go, right? I mean, they were trying to reel him in.
I think at the beginning they let him go.
Yeah, and then they
clearly,
too much.
Nobody tried to go with him.
Yeah,
there was no acceleration of tempo or no increase in tempo from behind. So they let him get a gap, perhaps thinking that he would come back on his own. Or
did they not think he's an overall threat?
No,
because now he's 12 seconds behind.
He's absolutely an overall threat. This is a kid who's won a Grand Tour. This is
so why did they let him go? Could Froome just not answer that?
No, I think he showed later on that he was, Froome and Port and others showed that they were strong. I think he could have gone, but they may,
this is something to watch. Aru in the mountains is something to watch.
He's asserted himself. He was one of the ones who disappointed in the Stage 1 opening time trial. But that acceleration today, and to be able, even though it was only a move of a few kilometers, it's still significant. He showed that he has quote-unquote power.
And so if you're Froome, are you just keeping an eye on somebody like that? You got to be watching the time gap. So it's like they may have let him go off the front for a second, but they're watching it. The next one, he's watching the time gap.
They won't let him go again.
They won't let him go again.
No,
right?
and if he goes again alone, it's because they can't follow.
Okay.
Yeah.
They might have let him go a little bit today. And then somebody like Froome can make up some gap in the next time trial, too, over somebody like
there's only one other time trial. It's the day before Paris. It's 23 kilometers. 22 and a half kilometers, which is also a technical time trial. But that's short. I mean, you got to pay attention. I mean, if any quote-unquote climber that potentially has the yellow jersey going into that time trial, they'll figure out a way to time trial for 23 kilometers.
Yeah.
They always do. And again, I'm going to repeat it. They won't let him go in again alone, and if they do, it's because they can't follow.
And for those who didn't see it, it was an uphill finish, very, very steep. Aru just attacks, and nobody could go with him. A couple people we saw break. We saw Quintana break. Quintana, sorry. We saw Quintana crack a bit. And
you saw Bauke Mollema, who again did the Giro. There's a rider who was for almost the whole tour last year was set in second, and
Contador couldn't go with him. Couldn't answer.
The Pistolero didn't have bullets today, although he did come back a little bit at the end.
Yeah,
Pistol wasn't firing. No, we've seen. I mean, I think we see who who's going to contest the yellow jersey.
Okay, let's talk about some things where they were leading up to it, up to that uphill sprint finish that was going on, and that's some of the team tactics. So, a lot today we saw BMC on the front. Right. Why was that?
That's a great question. That's a great question, and I said yesterday that it's Sky's responsibility today to control that race. Sky must be going. Is it December 25th or is it July 5th? What are they doing? Why are you?
What can you guess that they were doing?
Well, they were setting up the stage for their lead rider, Richie Porte, but that's not their responsibility.
It wasn't a good strategy.
Those poor guys that are sitting on the front, those 6 guys that are pulling.
That
comes over the radio like, all right, boys, let's go to the front, and everybody looking around going, Did we get the radios mixed up here? Because we're on BMC.
Mm-hmm.
That makes no sense to me. Interesting. And it wasn't slow. And I noted to you earlier, JB, almost every one of these stages has finished ahead of the projected time, which it's great for the fan at home that wants to get on with their day. But that also really means that they're not going easy. Right?
Overall, it's a very fast tempo tour.
So far. I mean, some of these days, when you look in the race book, you have the projected finish times, and they base that on 3 different average speeds, like 40, 42, 44, right? So this is all, so far we're way ahead of the fastest projected time.
Another team that was doing some work on the front, caught you a little off guard, was Quick Step, and they had a guy in the break. What's going on there?
Yeah, again, setting the race up for Dan Martin. Dan Martin, who I don't think a lot of people realize. Dan Martin is Irish. He is Stephen Roach's nephew, which I just think is interesting. You just asked me about the possibility of doing the Giro and the Tour, winning them back to back. Stephen Roach won the Giro, the Tour, and the World Championships, which has only been done, I think, a few times. But so Dan Martin, he comes from a cycling family, but Quick Step was trying to set him up. He's right. He got second place. He put 4 seconds into Chris Froome and Richie Porte. And this is a kid who, when he made the move from Garmin to Quick Step, his career really took off. And he's a winner and a scrapper. And so that's what they were doing.
Interesting. A couple things I learned today. Why is the number 51 significant?
Yeah, so who was wearing... Aru's wearing 51. Fabio Aru's wearing 51. For a long time, number 51 was the most common, or was the let me say this right. I'm still a little nicked up. Number 51 was the winningest number in the history of the tour.
Outside of number 1.
Well, I think for a long time it was even more than number 1, but now, now number 1 is probably the winningest number. Mm-hmm. But six of those went away. And 181 went away, we think. But before that, number 51 is a very famous number. It's
it's a lucky number.
Don't think that somebody on Aru's team did not tell him the significance of number 51.
Really?
Yeah. It's kind of a superstition.
Are
he could win this Tour de France.
Really?
Yes.
Are the pro touring cyclists very superstitious? That's an example.
Yeah, of course. Look at the kid wearing number 13. This poor sap. He's got one of the numbers turned upside down. You guys, when he was on TV the other day, and I noted that they get freaked out about stuff like that.
Oh, he was intentionally upside down? That number?
What do you think he?
I've pinned a number upside down. Trust me.
I'm glad you bring it up. These numbers do not pin on.
They're stick-on.
They're stick-ons. It's the most annoying thing, not so much for the rider, but for the staff that has to do the laundry. That they stick on and they stay stuck on. So
really?
Whatever the sticky crap is, it just makes a mess. So he stuck that number 13 on
to undo the bad luck of number 13.
Yeah.
Things you didn't know.
Yeah.
Things you didn't know. Something else I didn't know about that I observed today is I was like, what is hanging out of that guy's jersey? We're sitting there watching. You may have stepped out for a second, and Dave Bulch was with us, and he's like, oh, that's an ice pack. That's a pantyhose full of ice. So let's talk about that.
I was going for that.
And let's talk about the heat. They were talking about the heat, which, depending on where you live in the world, 90 degrees can sound really hot or like nothing. those of us that live in the middle of Texas, 90 degrees doesn't sound that bad. But when you're putting in that kind of effort with that kind of finish, 90 degrees, I'm sure, is very significant.
Yeah, you saw anytime the riders completely unzip the jersey, it's hot. So it was about, in Fahrenheit, it was about 90 degrees. So I think a couple things. One, that's not Texas hot, but for Europe, that's hot. And I think we weren't there, but I suspect the humidity was high. But I think the most important thing is it was the first hot day, right? When they started this, they were cold when they started this race.
Yeah.
I mean, you saw on day, well, obviously not in the opening time trial, but on day 2, guys were wearing coats.
Yeah.
So in just 2 or 3 days, now they're hot, right? So that's an adjustment that a lot of guys struggle with.
And that could have to do with some of them cracking on that climb too. They need a few days to adjust to heat.
Yeah. Yeah,
Interesting.
But this well, look, I mean, the first climb, and this is the first true climb, is always interesting. There are guys that just, it sounds funny, but they need their climbing legs. They need to find their climbing legs. And so it's an adjustment. You're not riding 50 kilometers an hour on the flats, fighting for position, etc. It's a different dynamic.
And this wasn't one of those climbs where maybe I'm being out of school here, but you tell me it isn't a gradual thing where you get a rhythm and set in. That was just like, boom, we're at the climb, here's the finish, let's go.
Yeah.
As opposed to, like, do the climbers like it when it's a slow build up and you can get into a rhythm, it's a high tempo, and as opposed to one that just hits you over the head really quick?
I think it's a couple things. Number 1, 3 or 4 or even 5 real climbs before. So that, what we saw today, well, I think we can make a lot about Aru's performance and speculate on how he'll do long term. I'm long that stock. This wasn't a true mountain stage. I mean, this is a 6-kilometer uphill finish, steep, yes, but there was 1 Category 4 climb that doesn't soften up anybody's legs.
Mm-hmm.
So, but if you get into a day where you have 3, 4, or 5 major climbs, the dynamic of the race obviously slows down. Those attacks, like Aru made, become harder and harder to do. So we won't, you'll see a different dynamic when you have those days which are true mountain stages.
Now let's talk a little bit about Sagan, because it's not exactly a closed chapter here. I mean, it is for him.
Well, it is closed. It is closed.
But you were still hot about it last night.
I had to change my shirt. I had a shirt on that I was going down to the parade in, and I walked back home from Studio A, and I was like, I took a whip. I was like, whoa, I got to change my shirt.
You were mad.
I was mad, and I'm still mad. I'm not going to say any bad words because I got that email from the mom who listens at home with her kids, and I used a bad word yesterday because I was mad, but I'm still mad.
Well, of course, what we're talking about is Peter Sagan being DQ'd from the entire Tour de France, all the remaining stages. Everything's done. A guy who was going to, I believe he was going to be tying the record for the most green jerseys. He had a lot on the line.
Yeah, well, guess what? He's going to get the record. I mean, let's not kid ourselves.
He's still got enough years.
Of course.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
But it was very controversial. In your opinion yesterday, you were very outspoken about it. The elbow didn't come out until Cavendish was already going down. Cavendish was trying to go somewhere that wasn't there. There wasn't a lane there. You feel like he got robbed. And even last night, I mean, it was like
I don't want to. I'm not picking sides. I think the decision's wrong. I'm a fan of Mark Cavendish. He's a personal friend, and I don't know Peter Sagan. I raced with him. I had a little bit of crossover with him, but I don't know him. I'm just saying that the call by the jury was wrong. Well, now they're both out of the race. By the way,
right.
Not only is Sagan the biggest athlete in this game, he draws the most attention, et cetera, but so is Mark Cavendish. So they just lost 2 of the biggest stars of the race.
They're kind of shooting themselves in the foot as far as bringing in fans, huh? Well, here's Peter Sagan's press conference from yesterday. I love this guy's accent.
Of course you do. How can you not?
He's so entertaining.
I don't make a rape. I think he says that in the interview. I'm going to hear it now because if he says that, wow.
All right. This was his press conference yesterday after finding out he's been disqualified.
And first of all, hello everybody. Thank you for coming here. Sorry to, I didn't do some report yesterday or something. My thing was not good time. And today, what I can do, I can just accept the decision of the jury. But for sure, I am not agree with that because I think I didn't do something wrong in the spring. What is very bad is Mark, fell down, and that is important if he can recover well. I'm sorry for that. But it was, how you see already also on the internet, it was, crazy sprint. It's not the first one like that, and it's not last one like that. And so I, wish to Mark recovery well, and that's it.
That is it.
A lot of
I don't do the rape.
a lot.
I think that's what he said. It's just
I can't tell what he's saying. I love it. But a lot of comments I was seeing on our Facebook feed from yesterday is people were referring to the countless number of elbows that Cavendish is throwing. It's part of the sport. It's not, neither one's good or bad. They both are. And I went back and I was listening to something from the day before, stage 3. And you were talking about Sagan and needing to have that aggressive sprint attitude and throw your elbows and
the elbows give you space.
yeah.
And I think that why is Rob Kardashian trending on Twitter? That's weird. That's off subject, right?
It is a little bit.
Because I wanted to look at something on Twitter, but the elbow, that gives you space, and I do think, and we don't need to talk about this really anymore, but I do think that elbow didn't knock down Mark Cavendish.
No.
Cav was on his way down. I did see an interesting tweet from somebody, and you're big into these barriers, etc. But they have these. I haven't seen, and maybe I haven't paid enough attention, but now they have these sort of these pop-outs where that have ads and have their sponsors on them.
I saw that, the one that he
actually
hit.
Jut out, so he did hit that.
It absorbed his fall a bit.
Yeah.
Not enough to keep you from
Or
going
it took
to
him. What if the thing's not there?
Yeah.
So who knows? I mean, but the elbow didn't take him down, and we're gonna stop talking about this. But and I do think that the elbow was him actually trying to catch him. He was also losing it a little bit.
What do you do if you're Sagan, though? Do you just go home and start planning and get in the Vuelta?
I don't know. I'm sure. He's such a free-spirited dude. He's probably thinking, okay, cool.
My season's over?
Yeah, no, I'm going to go sit on the beach for a few weeks.
Okay.
And by the way, no, you know what he's thinking? I got this right. Either his wife's pregnant or he just had a baby. I think he just had a baby. So he's probably saying, all right, cool. I'm going to go home and hang out with my new baby. The other day we talked about, we talked about it a couple times, and I just sort of was curious or wondered if these sprinters get scared.
Mm-hmm.
I just assumed it's so fast and so sketchy that they have to get scared. And then I got this text from Lawson Craddock, young professional on Cannondale, who also lives in Austin, who sent me a text and said, sprinters don't get scared. I posted that on my Instagram. I'm like, yeah, oh my God, that's insane if they don't get scared. Mm-hmm. I just got a direct message from Greg Henderson, Greg, thank you for tuning in. Greg raced on the Pro Tour for a long time. Is now racing, I believe, here domestically for a domestic team. An Australian guy. He says to me on this DM, he says, should I do it with the Australian accent or not?
Sure, try it. What the heck?
Nah, people make fun of me. Sprinters do get scared, mate. 5K to 2K is freaking scary. When lead out is open, it's all adrenaline that takes over. When you're in a position to win, you never actually think consciously. It's instinct from that point. Mm-hmm. So here's a guy who's sprinted against the best in the world, and also later in his career was part of that train. He was the Mark Renshaw for Cavendish. He's the last guy. Mm-hmm. If you're the last guy to pull off, you're in the sprint.
Right.
And so interesting perspective.
He says it is scary.
Yeah.
It's terrifying.
Yeah.
It's got to be terrifying.
Yeah. But I think he says, they don't think consciously. Well, it's instinct at that. I mean, you see, it happens so fast. And even in watching it, not to go back to it again, but that's why people thought that elbow knocked down Mark Cavendish, because it happened so fast. It only if we didn't have slow-mo and replay, we'd have thought he knocked him down with his elbow. But when you go back and look at it, that isn't what happened. Have I mentioned that I disagree with this decision to kick him out?
No,
of the
you
tour?
haven't mentioned that. Let us
Okay,
know
well, I
about it.
disagree.
Okay.
I'm going to send an email in.
So one of the,
to Stages Podcast at We Do Sport. I'm going to send an email in.
well, with Sagan getting kicked out, this comes into play as we look at tomorrow's finish,
Yep.
which you say is very technical.
You know, it is. I'm looking at. We don't know how. I mean, we're not there. You know, I do. I will say I enjoy Christian Van der Velde's when they film him riding through the finish and kind of going turn by turn. I think that's super compelling. I would love. You know, we don't have that opportunity to do that on this show, so all we do is look at the book. You know, when I look at this book, I see a lot of turns in the last 7 kilometers. You see a sharp left at 2K to go. You see a roundabout, right, which is like the worst thing, with 1K to go. And then it almost appears, for our friends on Facebook Live, you can actually look at it. It almost appears that like 200 meters before the finish, there's another roundabout. So surely, I'm thinking...
It got removed.
They're going to take that out. I mean, you can't have a roundabout with 200 meters before the
Or
finish.
it's going to be carnage.
It has to be gone.
Yeah.
We could probably Google. No, it wouldn't. Yeah. Anyways, we'll see tomorrow. But it's this looks a little technical to me.
So does that, kicking Sagan out, where I was going with this, does that send a message to any other of the sprinters? Were they using him as an example of, you know, you cannot be that physical in a sprint? Or does it matter? It's business as usual tomorrow.
Oh my God! Hang on 1 second. I just got a DM from George Hincapie. George, thank you. George is tuning in live.
He must be catching Facebook.
Yeah, he's live on Facebook, and I really messed this up. He says it's a New Zealand accent, bro.
Oh.
Word for word. Sorry to Greg Hinder. That's like the worst insult you can say about an Aussie is or about a Kiwi is call him an Aussie. That's serious. I'm blaming the fourth for that. I'm taking the fourth on that one. Yeah, Kiwi. Jeez. Okay, sorry.
All right, let's wrap up talking about this finish tomorrow and your predictions, and then I've got some comments I pulled from Facebook
Okay.
that I'd love to bounce off.
I'm going with Kittle again. I think I just, although this kid yesterday, Demare, this French kid, granted that was not a normal sprint. It was as we said yesterday, a race of 20 guys. But did you? I mean, it wasn't like he was sprinting against a bunch of bellhops. I mean, he was sprinting against some fast people. He was moving. By the way, too, it got totally lost in this controversy with Sagan and Cavendish. The move he made on Buhani, go back and watch. Nobody even looked at that because they were so consumed with watching Mark Cavendish yard sale and disqualifying Sagan. Look at the move he put on Buhani. He completely chopped him. I mean, Buhani had to just stop his sprint. So, but nobody even, it was like...
So I didn't even catch it.
If you go back and look at it, and you have to kind of read through all the stuff online or on Twitter or on the cycling sites, but he completely chopped him.
So would a rider like that go protest?
I have a feeling his protest fell on deaf ears.
Okay. And on that note,
yesterday.
Did Cavendish or his team have to file a protest for it to be looked at?
That's a good question.
Or no?
I don't think
the
so.
The governing body just took their own...
I don't think so.
It's just...
An act of violence. Come on. Rolf Aldag, you should know better. The director, Cavendish director. Come on. You raced at the highest level.
He called it an act of violence?
Yeah, that was it. Anyways. So this Demare kid is quick.
Okay.
So, but he doesn't have the train, right? That
the lead out.
That Quickstep has. Quickstep also too now has another horse in this race. Dan Martin is an overall contender for this bike race, and so, I don't think they sit around and go, "Oh my God, are we a sprint team? Are we a GC team?" But they got a GC player now.
All right, let me bounce some comments off you. This will be fun. Some of them are all over the place.
I can't imagine.
Let's see. Jacob Lindstrup writes, greatest athlete ever. Saw you in the World Championships in Oslo in '93.
Yeah, many moons ago.
Wow.
It's been so long ago that the World Championships are back in Norway again this year. 1993, what is that? It's 24 years ago. God.
Someone's just sending out some love to you. Sudeep Lavanya says, I'm facing testicular cancer and can use a word of motivation.
Sudeep, hang in there. You know, the bad news is you have cancer. If there's any good news is you have the most treatable and curable form of cancer known to man. So, you know, the treatment and the standard of care for that particular type of cancer is pretty standard. And with that standard care, you have cure rates in the 90+ percentile. So
There you go.
just
Sudeep.
you can hang on that one, and then just know that you know, all of us here in Studio A, everybody listening on Facebook Live or listening on iTunes or whatever. Sudeep Strong. Hashtag Sudeep Strong.
There you go.
Yep.
Arnaud Wolford writes, there is only one boss and his name is Bruce Springsteen. Lance is a good second, though. Dan Lavelle writes...
I hope he doesn't want me to argue about that.
No, you
Okay.
can't argue that. I didn't think you would.
No.
Dan Lavelle writes, how have you been with keeping your French going? Are you losing it, or do you have anyone to practice with?
No, I can't. It was so bad from the get-go that I couldn't have lost it.
It wasn't even... you lived there for a good length of time. It never got good?
No.
What about when you lived in Spain? How was your Spanish?
I learned more Spanish not from living, because I lived in Girona, so that you hear more Catalan than you do Spanish. In fact, there locally they frown upon speaking Spanish. But I learned more Spanish just because most of my team was from Spain. So just Johan would be on the radio, race radio, and talking to those guys in Spanish. So it's like why I would pick up Flemish, right? So, anyways,
that's interesting. Paul Whitman Jr. writes, what is the deal with gauze in Tony Martin's nose while warming up?
You know, for the TTs, you know, what they do is I don't know if it's gauze or if it's like a cotton swab. Mm-hmm. They'll take it and they'll dip it in some sort of like a menthol or something that opens up the nasal passages. And so that back in the day, you saw everybody do it. It's rare that you see people do that now, but that's he's kind of old school. I can see why he still does that. I didn't notice that. And
on that note of warming up, something that people are curious about when you have a summit finish is you've got to cool down.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. And actually, Todd DeBuff, who's in our studio with us today, the president of Top Rank Boxing, asked me about it. He's like, why are they riding more? Haven't they had enough?
Right.
And I mean, the reality is obviously today is a shining or a solid example. When you have a finish like that, that's uphill, finishes with 20%, they are going as hard as they can go. So this idea that you just get off the bike and stop, well, it doesn't take a genius to figure out that's probably not a good idea.
Right.
Let's just spin the legs for 10 minutes. You know, I suspect most of the guys now do it on every stage. And it just, you know, even the flat days, they're so fast and so intense. They are going hard. I mean, there may not be a selection in the group, but they're going hard. So hop on the trainer or the roller, whatever it is, spend 5-10 minutes just to kind of flush out that lactic acid. And I think it makes a big difference going into the next day.
I think on an upcoming podcast, and we do have a lot of time, we're only 5, stages into this.
Yeah.
We'll get into some of that pre and post ride practices because cyclists are weird. Their feet are in the air all the time, and it's just weird.
You know what's interesting too, and I'll just make note of this. Not that we would ever see this, or even a viewer on at home, but if you're at the race and you see, and it's a flat day, and it's later in the tour, and you see a guy warming up for a 200-kilometer stage. Guess who's the first one to attack?
He's going at the gun.
He's going from the gun.
Yeah, it's a dead.
So typically you see it later on when teams haven't won a stage, a rider hasn't. They're wanting something. When you see homeboy out warming up, you know who's going.
Another thing along that line you can see is the riders who start shaking their legs, start wobbling their thighs. They're about to get ready for a sprint usually.
Yeah.
Isn't that usually a dead giveaway?
I don't know. I haven't thought about that.
You know, it's grabbing their thigh and wiggling.
Can we cut that part out?
Did I just make that up?
They could be cramping.
Yeah.
I mean,
it could be hurting.
I've been the last 6 months where I've been riding hard. It's been like cramp city for me. I shake the heck out of my legs. Just like, come on.
Okay. Doesn't mean you're about to sprint.
I'm still wondering why Rob Kardashian's trending. It's weird.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Rob Ayers writes, "What's the best beer to drink while watching the Tour de France?"
Well, we watch it at 7 in the morning, so
Coffee.
I don't drink that early.
Maybe he's watching. The Australians watch, and it's like midnight.
Yeah.
1 a.m.
Yeah, well, then
finishes.
they can drink Foster's.
They can drink whatever.
But although they show it all day long, so you could. Sore subject today.
Okay, one more question for you.
And let's roll.
Didier Menu writes, I could be butchering your name, I'm sorry.
Probably.
Unless it's a German name.
It's probably Didier.
Didier?
Yeah. Let's just,
Didier.
Didier.
The German names I can pronounce.
Yeah.
Could you climb a pass in the Alps today?
Yeah. Come on, bro. I mean, yeah, of course. It would be so much slower. It would be. It's funny because I watched. Well, George Hincapie was just over there. We should talk to him about it. He just rode the Ventoux. I mean, you just look. You need more gear on the back, in the rear end, and then you just go slower. I mean, that's the reality. But yeah, I could get over anything.
Okay. If you want to send a comment, have any questions, we're going to be answering a lot more of your questions going forward. Stages at WeDoSport.com. It's WEDU sport.com. Send the link to your friends to subscribe if they haven't gone on. Oh, hey, I'm going to pat you on the back because I don't think you will on this.
Okay.
This podcast, 5 days into it, well, today's day 5, 4 days into it, has cracked the top 10 of recommended podcasts on iTunes.
It's crazy.
That's huge.
There was a fellow that tweeted this at me, and I was sort of like, kind of rubbing my eyes, going, "Am I seeing this right?" It's nuts.
For a podcast to only have 4 episodes out,
I love it. I'm honored.
and for iTunes to take notice and put it in the top 10 of recommended.
Yeah.
Thank you very much to the folks at Apple.
Yeah.
Whoever's they have editors that decide what goes in that list.
Love it. And they must figure. I mean, I don't know if we're gaining some traction or what, but we certainly appreciate it. And then speaking of podcasts, this is kind of a shameless plug, but my main podcast, The Forward, I got a really special one this week. FK Day is a heck of a guy, neat guy, one of the founders of SRAM, but more importantly, started an amazing nonprofit called the World Bicycle Relief, and this is a big month for them, 200-year birthday for the bicycle. They have a big fundraising effort. They have a matching set of donors up to $250,000. So if you're bored, and it's a shorter one, it's about 45 minutes, go listen to FK and I talk.
All right. Stagespodcast.com to get all of the feeds, whatever you like to use, iTunes, Google Play, SoundCloud, whatever works best for you. Post it on your social media and share it.